The wheels do indeed keep turning. Welcome back to the second hour of LoveBabz, LoveTalk. I'm so happy that Mr. Harris is here with me this morning because Toto went to Simi's funeral, which starts in about 10 minutes. And so the good people of the Sportsman Center made sure that I wasn't left high and dry. So I appreciate you, Patrick, and all the good folks over doing the good work over there at Big Voice Communications, Natalie and Patrick. Thank you. So it is very nice to see Ionne. No.
Ionne.
Ionne.
Yes.
No, it's good to see you again because you've been here a while ago, but under a different, not promoting your own, talking about your own music.
That's right. You know, I wear different hats, and first and foremost, I want to express my condolences to Toto and send my thoughts and prayers to him. I actually saw him just yesterday when I was wearing my other hat, my other identity, Maurice Harris, working, doing my promotional work here at the Yale Schwarzman Center. And yeah, so today, you know, putting on my Ionne hat, my alter ego, my artist hat, here I am again, and very pleased to speak with you in this format and around this topic.
I love that you have these hats because it just makes for an interesting life. I wear a lot of hats too, so I get it. So I love that you can have the artist hat, you can have the professional hat, you can have all the hats, and then sometimes the stars align and you know all the hats fit.
Yeah. You know, for me, I don't feel like there's that much of a difference between them. I always describe, you know, when the connection, on one side, I'm an artist, and the other side, I'm an arts administrator. And then when you look at sort of the shape of arts today, I feel like you really, artists really have to be disciplined in both areas, really in order to sort of excel as artists, really. They have to have an understanding of the business, of the administrative side. And so for me, I really actually quite enjoy working on both sides of the house. Not only that, you know, I really love the opportunity to promote the works of other artists, especially works that I feel, you know, that really resonate with me personally, that, you know, you want the rest of the world to be able to share and enjoy.
Love it. So tell me about Fracture. Tell me about this. Tell me all about this.
Right. So Fracture, this has been quite an experience. Just over a year ago, so a year and maybe a few months ago, I was on your program with my brother Rod, my co-founder of 15 Records. Yes. And around that time, so that was around the time that I had released my last album, For Those Who Remain. So if you recall, the theme of that album was around the intersections of racial, social, and environmental justice, inspired in part by Octavia Butler's work, Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. And so that was, that sort of led me down a certain path, a certain, and really sort of just led naturally into the new wave of inspiration and introspection. So the process around this album Fracture, the process of how it came to be was a bit different from For Those Who Remain. I think For Those Who Remain was much more externally focused, things that, I was reading in the media, things that I was, sort of studying, even academically, the connection between racial, social, and environmental justice. Whereas here, Fracture became very introspective, and in some respects, a bit dark, but also I think in keeping with my typical format, with this glimmer of hope. And so with Fracture, it was really about taking a step back, or taking a step inward perhaps, and taking a look at all those things that I had put my faith in. And that I think people tend to put their faith in things like religion and government, and you fall back on the things that you have been taught to believe about love and acceptance. And when you see these things breaking down, just systematically breaking down, how do you express that, and what can you do with that? And so this idea of fracture, emerged. I leaned much more heavily into the sci-fi aesthetic that sort of began with For Those Who Remain, this idea of, leaving the earth or experiencing things that, are that feel so unreal. You're asking yourself, could it happen here? And really just exploring that further through Fracture. But like I said, at the end, to some degree, there's a happy ending, or at least a glimmer of hope, recognizing that we ourselves individually, we have the power to change how we see the world and how we build from these fragments, from this fracture, or how we repair these rifts and create a new world based on new ways of seeing, new ways of believing, that may work for today and that may work for the future, rather than basing all of our beliefs, all of our faith on the things that we might have been taught to trust in from the past.
Did it lift you? Did it lift you? Like if it started off with a little darkness, did it lift you in the end to a place of perhaps?
It was cathartic. It was cathartic. So I think in that sense, it did lift me, because it was almost at points of purification process. I think, for example, about the current single, The Last Time. So The Last Time, an interesting story. I actually wrote that song back in the early 2000s. And for those internet sleuths who know where to look, they can still find the original version of this track, which so that the melody of the song and the major components of the arrangement are very similar. So you'll recognize it immediately as the same song, and you'll recognize the vocalist as well. But this new version, when I started to sort of pour myself, my feelings into this new version, it became very heavy, much more sort of almost gothic feel. I'm finding that a lot of gothic playlisters on Spotify, for instance, have really picked up on that element of it. And rather than try to dial that back again, I just leaned into it. I said, this is sort of the opportunity to express like what this song really means beyond the original, maybe superficial aspect of this song about broken relationship. There's a million songs about a broken relationship, but this broken relationship, when I look at it in a new lens and with maybe older and wiser eyes, this new lens had a lot more to do with social breakages and breakages on a much deeper level that get us caught into these cycles and these patterns that can be ultimately very harmful if we don't make an effort to recognize them and to break these patterns, or to accept that that's perhaps what we want for ourselves. And if we recognize that about ourselves. So that, I think, was, for me, it was in that way cathartic, or even cleansing, to be able to just get that out.
Now, do you stay in a constant state of reflection and retrospective? And do you approach all the music with that sense of, let me dig deep,
I love that you asked that question, because if you had asked me that question maybe 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, the answer would have been probably not. Asking me that question today, I would say absolutely yes. Ironically, a lot of my approach to music today is actually inspired by my academic practice. I think about one of the more inspiring sort of academic theories that I've been engaged in is something called Theory U, which is it emerged out of MIT, a professor from MIT that had written about ways of like this U-shaped change process. And I think about the three sort of major components. The first one is all about when you become sort of interested in a topic, researching everything that you can about this topic. And then the next piece is sort of digesting that and understanding it and reflecting on it very intentionally. And then the third part is applying that. How do we create change based on that? And so I actually apply that model to my music as well, making it a very sort of intentional part of the process to reflect and not just to I think it's very easy as artists. It's a very artistic thing to do to just write about our experiences, to write about the feelings without perhaps taking a step back and unpacking those feelings and digging a little deeper and maybe understanding kind of the roots and the history of those feelings and trying to articulate those more nuanced aspects of feelings. So yeah, I think for me, it's a very intentional part of the process.
So when you're listening to other artists, like what do you gravitate toward? I mean, I know everybody like, oh, I listen to all kinds of things, and that's true. Mm-hmm. But when you want to vibe, when you want to be intentional about what you're listening to, what do you seek out? What do you pull from the archives? What do you listen to right now? That kind of stuff.
Right. It depends on my mood. It really does. I can tell you that it is, because I spend a lot of time in my own thoughts. Sometimes I do just want to have fun, and I just want to listen to music where I can just move and not to think too heavily about anything but having a good time. And then there are other times when, I'm interested to hear how other artists are intentionally using their work to inspire change or to maybe to shake things up a little bit in terms of the messaging, in terms of the content. I'm thinking, we were talking about the multiple hats I wear. I was thinking just recently when we had a student event here at Yale with Ionne was on the lineup, a trans woman rapper from Puerto Rico, and just listening to really inspired by how she uses her work to and her lyrics to drive social change, but in a very sort of using this entertainment platform as a platform for driving social change in a very powerful way. So yeah, so it really just, for me, it depends on my mood. And then I if I look at my personal playlist right now, I was really digging the deep house cut that came on just before this interview, because I've got a lot of deep house in my playlist right now that just takes me to my happy place. That for me is like musical comfort food. So that's where I like to be, especially when the weather's starting to cool off like it is now.
Yes, and speaking of deep house music, the Queen Bee herself has dabbled into the world of house music in her what is it, Renaissance album?
Okay,
Beyonce, and I don't know if you've heard any of it, but she taps some like Sylvester and old school heavy hitters, and I don't know if you listen to popular music like that.
I love it. I am there for it. I'm going to go listen to it after this interview. I have to tell you, the time and energy that one invests into producing an album, it does kind of, you don't spend a whole lot of time expanding your listening during that time, or at least I don't. I think that for me, it happens in waves. So now that I'm sort of coming off of the production of Fracture is when I go out and look for all those things that I may have missed because I had my head so firmly planted in the production of the album. So I'm on the lookout now for really great new music that I haven't heard yet.
Now, do you get to, things have lifted a great deal. Do you get to go and perform your music? Do you get to go see other people perform music? Have you done any of that kind of stuff yet? And will you do that?
Yes and yes. So this one will probably make you laugh, just because it's no surprise that when Kraftwerk was in town, I was there for it. I went to see Kraftwerk when they were in town. Of course, the electronic music, the connection there, and my having been a Kraftwerk fan literally as long as I can remember. So that was a lot of fun. Went to see them at music. Oh, I have to think of the name of the venue. I keep forgetting the name of the venue. It's right here in downtown New Haven. But in any case, went to see Kraftwerk. And I will have a performance of my own coming up on September 30th at
Oh,
Next Haven. Yes. Yes.
Next Haven is letting
Virtually
people perform in there.
well, they're letting me perform it there. I'm doing my, so it'll be the album release party. And this
I
event,
hope I'm on that list.
you are, absolutely. So check your email for the invitation. This event is also on Eventbrite. So anyone who's listening can get a ticket while they are still available. This is a really interesting performance, though. We're billing it as an excital. So we made up this word. It's a combination exhibition recital. So for the past year, as I have been producing this album, I've been working with a group of local creatives, Black creatives here in New Haven called the Collective New Haven, the Collective HB. And they have been creating a collection of photography, which we'll be presenting as a series of posters in an exhibition style there at the event that chronicles the story of the album. So kind of similar to, for those who remain my previous album, this album here, while the songs can be taken individually, when you listen to the songs and when you listen to the song sequence from beginning to end, a concept album sort of emerges, and there's a story that's being told. And so the idea is to bring in an audience to actually experience visually what the collective was imagining as they heard the album taking shape. So they had the benefit of hearing the album take shape over the past year or so, and we'll exhibit those works. And then I'll perform selections from the album live there at the event as well.
Wow, this is cool. Now, when's the last time you performed?
Wow, it's been a minute. Since pre-pandemic, and actually since pre-New Haven. So if you recall, I moved to New Haven in January of 2020. And so I think my last live performance was actually in Cincinnati. I spend so much time, and when I say in Cincinnati, this would have been 2016-ish. I spend so much time in doing studio production, not just my own work, but studio production for other artists as well, that my focus until very recently actually had not been on live performance. It had actually been on studio production. And then as I have been, kind of around the release of my most recent works, not only my label, but other arts friends of mine, including members of a collective that I'm a part of, the Midnight Oil Collective, also based here in New Haven, have really been nudging me to, get out there get out of the studio and get on the stage. They've really enjoyed, kind of hearing the work take shape, and they've wanted, broader audiences to be able to experience that live. So I can do that.
You balance all of this. How do you craft an album, do your artistic professional work, cultivate artists for your label, and then maybe perform some of it? Like, how do you what's your day like?
Yeah, that's interesting, because it's interesting because on one hand I could answer compartmentalization, so this idea of you have to keep everything in these tidy little buckets, but for me, I think that it's the antithesis of compartmentalization. There's so much blur between all of these, various things that they all sort of go together. So it's like one compartment. And then I have another compartment, which is downtime. So we've got all this work that sort of fits together, and then we have downtime. So for me, it's, I'm constantly asked this question. I was actually asked this question just yesterday. And for me, it just all seems to fit together, because it's something that it's something I love doing. It's something I enjoy doing. So it's never something I feel like I have to find time for. And I, just, if I may wax a little spiritual for a moment, for me, that's, sort of an important part of my own spiritual practice. I recognize when, just check in with myself and recognize when something, whatever it is that I'm doing, feels like it really is a drain on my time and a drain on my energy. That's when I have to, really think a little more carefully around, is this something that I should be doing? Is this really where my focus should be? I found that, no matter how busy, my music or the arts administration work keeps me, how it occupies my time, that's a different kind of tired at the end of the day. That's a very sort of satisfying feeling at the end of the day. you know that you're going to rest and you can look forward to getting up and doing that again, versus you know, the kind of burnout that you might feel when you're doing things that just don't nourish you. Yeah.
So what does rejuvenation look like for you? Like, is it a walk in the woods? Is it, you know, what do they call it? Tree bathing or you know, what do you do?
Sometimes I do love to get out and walk in the woods. I do love to hike, but I also love to get out of town. And interestingly enough, I think when a lot of folks get out of town, it's to go to some hideaway, some natural retreat somewhere. I tend to enjoy visiting cities. And so, yeah, I've got, you know, again, this dichotomy.
Run to the noise, run to the things.
Right, run to the noise, run to the bustle of the city, and then retreat back here to New Haven when I'm done.
So what do you want when people hear this album and it releases at the you said the end of October or the end of
September 30th. So September 30th, the album drops. September 30th is the Fracture recital, the exhibition recital release party that we're doing. So it all drops on September 30th.
So what do you want when people see it? What do you hope as an artist, what do you want people to take away from it? Or do you stand back and say, you know what, I don't care what people get from it. Whatever they get from it, I don't have an expectation. Do you do that?
I have expectations, and I recognize that I have very little control over what they will ultimately interpret from the project. And interpretation is very important. So I have my intention. I may have my intention, but I think the interpretation is what will mean the most in the end, so to speak. So the intention is really a recognition of the breakages in our systems. I'll use that term intentionally broadly. So wherever we fit in that and whatever role we play, and owning that and taking accountability for it, but also recognizing our power in that we have the power to change who we are. And by virtue of that fact that we have the power to change who we are, we can change the world that we live in. It sounds so simple, but it's a very nuanced and complicated thing, as we know. When we try to live that day to day, it's one of those things that's easier said than done. That's the intention. But the interpretation, I said, could be, you know, very different, and that's what the audience will feed back to me.
I like it. So talk to me about the business of music. You know, I mean, I imagine just as a spectator that it has changed a great deal, because there are so many opportunities for folks to get their music out there without sort of a big record deal, right? Yes. Like they don't have to, they can actually put their own music out there. And we've seen the success of people doing that throughout the various streaming and all that kind of stuff. Where do you see all that going? And where do you think you fit in and have some say in how to move your music?
It's a double-edged sword, the democratization of music, as I've called it. And I say it's a double-edged sword because, to your point, there are so many opportunities for artists to get their music out these days. The flip side of that is the question sometimes around the quality or the curation or the, you know, and the fact that there is just so, by virtue of the fact that there is so much out there, how do you choose, you know? And for me, I think that that's kind of the fun part of it, just the exploration and the discovery of new music. But we also find that, you know, even still, you know, major corporations find ways to elevate and promote their artists over other artists, even within these digital platforms. We find out that a lot of these digital platforms, I'm going to sermonize a little bit and go into my manifesto against, you know, corporately controlled music. But you know, what we find these days is a lot of these platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, streaming platforms, tend to serve as a wonderful point of advertising, in as much as they, you know, can get the artist's music out there, and the curators on these platforms, you know, do a really great job of selecting music based on people's tastes and being able to recommend to them new things that they may not have discovered, new artists that they may not have discovered. However, we find that, unfortunately, those same models can be very unprofitable for the artists. Just the very little to be made, for example, through just streaming music. And so to your point, you had suggested or implied that there may be other ways, other opportunities for artists to proliferate their works. And for me, I have really been interested lately in the idea of these combination exhibition recitals. So the Fracture recital that I'll be doing on September 30th at Next Haven is not actually my first foray into this type of work. Just recently, I collaborated with a group of visual artists in Cincinnati to develop a custom, so to develop a soundtrack, if you will, or develop music for a custom exhibition that they had placed in a gallery in Cincinnati. And that music will in turn be released as a standalone EP, or we may flesh it out a little further so that it's a standalone album, but really playing with this idea of arts collaborations as a sort of niche, at least for my work.
I like that idea. That's a very interesting way to sort of, it does a couple of things for me. It gets artists and different artists together, right? You're in a gallery space that isn't necessarily used for performative kinds of things. You walk in, you look at the art, you walk out. But now you get to stay and see some art being created and showcased and married in ways that people don't really experience. So do you think this is a brave new world?
I hope so. I mean, yeah, this is not, it's not new to put music and, visual arts together. That's not a new thing. I think the new aspect, the more nuanced aspect of it that I've been trying to do is to do this in a very intentional way. So the visual art is developed in tandem with the musical work. It's designed to be together. And then those components also can be taken apart. So the visual artist, for instance, may commercialize their works, the visual works, the artifacts from this exhibition. Similarly, the musician can commercialize the artifacts from the musical piece, but then there is this purely artistic piece, this immersive experience that they've created together that they can also recreate for audiences to continue to enjoy.
Now, will anything be for sale? Like,
yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I would be remiss if I didn't put a plug in for the collective. So I had mentioned at the exhibition on the 30th that there will be the gallery exhibition will be positioned as posters. And so the posters will be available for sale and for order at the event, as well as the Fracture album. So I've gotten away from, very intentionally, to environmental sort of, it really comes of my own conviction for environmental conservation. Instead of printing albums, I do promote downloading of music. And so the folks who attend the event on September 30th, each person will receive a download code for a free copy of the full album.
Mm-hmm. Will it ever be on, I'm old school. I like something in my hands, vinyl, CD. I get it. But
I'm sure we can hook you up. Yeah,
I was like, I appreciate.
We haven't mass produced the CDs, but I'm sure that we can make something for you, Babz.
Listen, I'm here for the environment. I'm here for it, but there's a little bit of me that's like, I still like a piece of vinyl or a little CD in my hand, that kind of thing. So, all right. So after you do this, are you thinking about the next project? Are you always thinking about the next thing?
Yeah, pretty much. It's so funny because, by the time an album is released, like Fracture, for instance, by the time this project is released, I'll probably be a third, if not halfway into the next project. That just tends to be my own process, my own cycle. The music, when you think about the work that goes into just releasing an album, so the music for the album is actually done months ago, and it's from then until now, just really building up to the exhibition and promoting the work. So, there's no shortage of inspiration, thankfully, and I like to use that time to create. And then I'll take some intentional and perhaps much needed breaks in between.
To the big cities.
Yes, to the big cities.
So now when you talk about inspiration, before I let you go, we're gonna play the song, one of the songs from one of your songs we're gonna play that was sent to me. do you walk around with a notebook? How do you capture inspiration? I know when I'm inspired by something, if I don't write it down, if I think, oh, I'll remember, I won't remember.
I get my best ideas when I am running. Love to run the Farmington Canal Trail. And usually when I'm about 2.5 miles into a 5-mile run, you get that stroke of inspiration. And I'm like, seriously, I have to try to repeat the idea in my head because I don't want to, break my stride and then pull out my cell phone and type in but that's usually where they end up. They end up in the notes section of my iPhone. So yeah.
That's pretty good. I love that people run that Farmington Canal. It runs by my house. I live in Newhallville. So I always see people running forward and backwards. I used to walk it. I used to run it when I could run. So I'm glad that we have that little gym in our city for people who come into town and need some running in the city. So I certainly enjoyed this conversation with you. I'm looking forward to this EP launch or to this exhibition music thing. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you so much for jumping in for Toto today. I appreciate you so much, Ionne. And Harry, if you want to play us out with the song, with the music, I'd appreciate that. And I will see you, Ionne, when you launch, when this drops.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much.
Killing time, several hundred years amount to castles that will never own, and songs I write but cannot sing myself, and dreams of spaceships and their secret plans to take us somewhere else. The mirror's cold, the glass is too. Tonight I feel so old, so used to pain from this malfunction, filling up my mind and spilling on our bed. This little robot should be sleeping, should be sleeping, should be locked away in solitude, like the last time, like the last time. Full of empty platitudes, like the last time, like the last time. Fall apart, like the last time, like the last time. What else can I drink to ease my mind when every thought I think returns to cards and pictures, countless roses, precious moment, laid to waste. Don't turn your back, don't
Wow. I know we have to go because my producer's gonna cut us off, but man, that was hot.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see you in a whole different light. That was like bad boy rock star. Not Ionne, that's pretty hot. I'm gonna tell you, I like it. Nice groove. Thank you so much for letting us play it.
Thank you so much for playing it. And I hope that you are able to make it on September 30th. I hope that everyone listening is able to make it on September 30th to the Excital.
All right. I'm excited. You have a good weekend.
You
And
too.
this is in my head now. I'm gonna go download it and play it some more. Thank you so much, my friend. I'll see you soon.
See you. Bye.
Thank you, Harry. I'll see you on Monday. Y'all have a good weekend and be safe out here. All right. Bye now.